Reactive expressions are the way to avoid code duplication inside of Shiny apps. Code duplication is already bad when you're doing regular R programming, but when you're doing Shiny apps, the more code you have duplicated, the more things will get ugly and it will be confusing really fast. So in Shiny, you try to avoid duplicate code as much as possible, and with reactive expressions, that's super easy, and I'll show you how that works. As always, we start with an empty app skeleton, we have an empty UI, an empty server, and we have a Shiny app that throws everything together. Here I'm using the print function because inside of positron, when you want to source this whole thing, printing is necessary. And now we can start to fill the user interface. Here I want to have a drop-down menu for species inside of the Parma Penguins package, more specifically inside of the Penguins dataset. And I also want to have another drop-down menu for the islands of the penguins. So if I were to execute only this part here, I'd see that I have a drop-down menu for the species and I have a drop-down menu for the islands of the penguins inside of my dataset. Also, I do want to have a few outputs, so let me throw in a plot output and a data table output, which is an easy way to show data inside of Shiny apps. So if I were to re-execute this, we'd see the exact same thing, because on our server side, we haven't actually done anything to create these outputs. For that, I want to make my inputs align within the same row. For that, all I have to do is to wrap them into layout column wrap from the bslib package, and I can do the exact same thing with the other two outputs. Now if I re-execute this, we see that my drop-down menus are side by side. So now that we have a dummy app with all the placeholders in place, okay, this is kind of what placeholders do, but with all of these things set up, we can now focus on generating the code on the server-side function that does the things. And as a kind of bad example, let's try to use duplicate code, and then once we figured out that, okay, it works like we'd expect, let's try to do better with reactive expressions. So now let's imagine that we want to use our species and islands to filter the penguins data set and display the exact same data within the plot output and the data table output. It's easy to imagine that we can use the exact same filtering code inside of the plot output and the data output. So let's do that. Let's render these outputs. So for the table output, we could target the TBL ID. That's the one we specified in the table output, and use the corresponding render function to render a dataset. Here we could technically use the penguins dataset as is, but of course we want to filter it using our inputs. So we're just going to use some conditions to filter. Here I want to get rid of all the rows that don't have a sex entry, and then I want to specify that the species and islands should be selected via the inputs. And if I were to do that, we'd see that I have a data table. Honestly, let's just look at this in full screen. So that's how my app currently looks. And for the plot output, we could technically do the exact same thing. So let's just copy and paste this part here. And then let's target the plot output or the plot ID. Let's use the render plot function to plot stuff. And then we use this filter data set and pass it to ggplot. Let's just take some dummy code I've prepared for this. And now if we close our current app and re-execute, then we see that we also have a plot now. And now if we filter this data set, we see that, for example, it can stay empty if we select chinstrap penguins because they don't live on Bisco or Porgerson, they only live on Dream. So that way we do have our desired app, but still we have duplicate code here. Namely, we duplicated this part as we've used the exact same thing in both render codes. And that's not great, so let's try to avoid this. And this is where reactive expressions come in. We can take this code here and then let's call the dataset or the reactive variable filtered data. And then let's wrap this into the reactive function that can take any arbitrary R code. So we're using these curly brackets again. And then the output of this curly brackets code, namely in this case only this part here, this one will be the data that is inside of the filtered data. So we could use this here and there. But we do have to be careful here. This won't work right now. And I do want to show you the error message that shows up because this is a very common mistake. And even I do it all the time because I forget a very simple thing. So I need you to pay attention here to see the kind of error message that you'd get so that you know how to fix this. So let me stop my app here. And now let's re-execute this here. And now my error message says something like error in ggplot, data cannot be a function. And the same thing happens inside of data for this render_dt function call. So you see that you can get all kinds of errors here depending on where you use your reactive. But whenever something is fishy, in this case, the data sets don't seem to be transferred well to the corresponding functions. Whenever something fishy like this happens, then chances are really high that you forgot to use parentheses. You see, when you use this filtered data reactive, you have to call it like a function to get the actual data. So now if I retry this, we see now that I don't get error messages and everything works still exactly the same. So I could filter here and see different kind of penguins. So the logic here is that a reactive is only a mechanism to give you the data that you want, and you can activate this mechanism by actually calling the reactive. So this is why filter data, you can think of it like a function that will give you the data, and whenever you want to use it, just call the function to get the actual data. But all of that is only nice until it isn't. When you always recalculate everything automatically, then things can get confusing really fast because something triggers something else, and then all of a sudden you have a chain of things that trigger one another and things get confusing. So this is why in a lot of cases you do want to use reactives, but you want to use them in a way that they are set manually in specific situations where you want that. And this is possible with two other functions that work very similar to reactive, and I'll show you that. But before, I want to point out that Shiny brings you into the world of web development. And this is a huge area, and there's lots of stuff to learn within this kind of world. And I cannot possibly cover everything here, but thankfully I do have friends who have thought about how to teach Shiny in a whole complete setting so that you can learn all the adjacent things as well. And this brings me to the Shiny courses by ATHLYTICZ. Their instructor Verla has put in a lot of effort to create an extensive curriculum to teach you everything you need to know about Shiny and the web development stuff. It will bring you from basic Shiny stuff like we learn here to very advanced things like even using JavaScript. And believe me, even if you don't want to use JavaScript now, the more you go down this Shiny rabbit hole, you will want to throw in a little bit of JavaScript every now and then because it's super cool. And it's not only cool, it is also super useful. So if you want to dive really deep into Shiny, I suggest that you check out Verla's courses, and if you use my affiliate code REP10, you can get 10% off all ATHLYTICZ data science courses. Alright, so we've figured out a way to recalculate stuff automatically without using duplicate code. That's nice, but often we don't actually want to have stuff done automatically. This kind of automatic behavior is nice until it isn't. It can be super confusing when you have a lot of interactive stuff, and then something triggers something, and then you have a chain of stuff that triggers one another, and then everything is messed up and it's confusing. So in a lot of cases, you might like to actually set things manually, but still use this reactive value concept to store stuff that you can use later on. And this is where reactive vals come in. Let's check that out. So here what we want to do now is to not use reactive, but instead use reactive val. For that, we're going to first initialize the reactive val. So let's call reactive. And there you see that there are multiple reactive functions. And here I want to use reactive val. So right now it is initialized, and then we can set that value by calling a filtered data. And then inside of the parentheses, if you don't specify anything, then you'll get the current value back. But if you want to set the reactive value, then you have to stick in the stuff that you want to set the reactive to. And then using this reactive works in the exact same way, so you have to call it. So now watch what happens if I try to re-execute my code. You'll see here that my app doesn't start. I get a whole bunch of warnings. It says something here that it can't access reactive value species outside of reactive consumer. And this always happens when you try to access inputs in a non-reactive way. You see, here you're trying to access the species input, and this can only happen inside of reactive consumers that can update all the time. We haven't actually encountered this before because with these render functions, they are reactive consumers. They always check did something change and then they act accordingly. But when you stick things into the server function as is without these extra rendering functions, then you'll tell R to just run this once and then forget about it. Or rather just keep the values that you've assigned into a variable, but other than that, you don't ever need to rerun this. And this is in stark contrast to you actually using the inputs. because if you want to use the inputs, then the chances are like 100% that you need to recalculate the stuff every time the input changes. So that's why you need to use this kind of code inside of a reactive consumer. And you can create a reactive consumer using the function reactive that we've just done. But since we don't want to use that function, we'll just use the other one, namely observe. Inside of observe, you can observe all the things, and this is how you make things into reactive consumers. And that's why you can just stick this stuff in here, and then R will know, okay, I got you. This stuff here can be rendered a whole bunch of times, and now it makes perfect sense that you're actually trying to access inputs, and I won't throw an error message. In fact, if we rerun this, we see that everything works again. So this is nice, but it's worth revisiting what we've done here. We have defined the reactive val outside of the observer, and we've updated it inside of it. That's a common pattern that you'll see all the time. First initialize stuff, and then when something needs to be recalculated on an ongoing basis, then throw it into an observer. If you wanted to, you could actually combine the observer with the bind event function that we have learned in a previous video. You see, you could pass this to bind event, and then all the inputs are isolated. And if I were to now recalculate this so that the code worked, let's just throw something in there, and now it works. But when I use my inputs, nothing updates. And that's because this observer is now isolated so that it only reacts to the events here and then triggers the full code that is inside of the observe code block. So let's try to map this to the input species here. And now if we re-execute this, we can, since we don't use the island stuff, we can toggle through stuff here and nothing will change. But if we change the species, then you see that things are updated. So that's something to keep in mind. Here we don't really need that, so we can just put it into a regular observer, and then everything works just like we expect. And we can toggle through the things in a dropdown and everything will adjust accordingly. Finally, let me show you one more thing that's very similar, but still slightly different. Namely, if we don't want to use the reactive val function, but instead use the reactive values function, then you have reactives that you can set manually, and you'll need to do it in observer if you want to use inputs here. But the syntax is more like a list. For example, we could take this code here and stick it into a variable called that, and then we could take our filtered data, and within the filter data reactive list, create an entry called that. And then we could use this kind of thing over here. And then if we rerun this, then this currently doesn't work because of course we forgot to assign stuff to the thing that we create. Now if we re-render this, then everything works as expected. So this is kind of a different syntax compared to the reactive val function. I actually prefer this kind of function because it's more list-like and it's nicer for debugging in my opinion, but feel free to use whatever style you like best. Perfect, we have yet again unlocked one of the fundamentals for Shiny apps. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you did. Of course, there will be more Shiny concepts coming your way, so don't forget to subscribe, and also don't forget about the ATHLYTICZ courses that will teach you everything you need to know about Shiny. And now, with all of that said, I say thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.